3 days after Holly got back from her business trip, she walked through the door like nothing had changed. Her rolling suitcase clicked across the floor, her phone buzzed in her back pocket, and her lips curved into that tired little smile I'd seen 1,000 times before. If I hadn't known better, I would have believed it all was normal. Flight was delayed, she said, dropping her bag by the stairs. I'm exhausted. You wouldn't believe how bad the coffee was at that place. I helped carry her luggage up. I shouldn't have. Later that night, while she was in the shower, I went to hang up her jacket. That's when it fell out, the receipt. Folded once, crisp, like it hadn't been crammed into a pocket by accident. I unfolded it. A hotel in Savannah. 2 nights. King suite? It didn't line up. She was supposed to be in Atlanta for that client meeting. That's what she told me. For a minute, I just stood there, holding it like it was burning my fingers. Maybe it was a mix-up. Maybe the company had changed venues. I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to believe that. But then something else fluttered out, a bar napkin, the kind they hand you with overpriced cocktails. Scribbled across it was a phone number and a short message that read, "You smelled like freedom." I stared at that napkin for a long time. You smelled like freedom. Who writes something like that unless they mean it? Unless something happened? The water turned off upstairs and I had just enough time to slide the napkin and receipt into the top drawer of my nightstand. She came down wrapped in a towel, rubbing her hair dry. What, she asked when she caught my face. You look like you saw a ghost. I held up the napkin. I didn't say anything. Just waited. She looked at it for maybe 2 seconds before rolling her eyes. Oh, that. Some guy at the bar was being flirty. It was harmless. I tossed the napkin. Must have gotten stuck in my pocket. You tossed it? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Yeah. Didn't think it mattered. She shrugged, then added, Are you really upset about this? Kevin, come on. People flirt. Doesn't mean anything. Harmless flirting. That's what we were calling it now. I thought you were in Atlanta, I said. I was. But the team decided to drive down to Savannah for the weekend. Last minute. I told you about that, didn't I? She hadn't. I would have remembered. I didn't push it. I didn't yell. That wasn't my style. I just nodded like some part of me still wanted to believe her. But the belief was already rotting from the inside. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the ring on my finger. I'd worn it for nearly 8 years. It had scratches now. Little nicks from all the times I worked on the house or carried furniture or reached out for her in the dark. I slid it off and placed it on the napkin. Right next to that message, you smelled like freedom. In the morning, I left both on her nightstand. I was in the kitchen pouring coffee when she found it. I heard her footsteps pause, then the soft sound of her picking it up. A minute passed. Then another. When she finally walked into the kitchen, she said nothing about it. Just kissed me on the cheek and asked if we had any milk left. Like nothing had happened. Like my ring wasn't lying next to some stranger's idea of poetry upstairs. We didn't talk about it. But something shifted. I started noticing things that had been there for months but didn't register until now. The way she kept her phone face down on the table. The sudden new password. Her increased travel, the late-night client calls in the hallway, the new perfume she insisted was from a coworker's jacket she'd borrowed. More than once. I'd seen the signs before. I just wasn't ready to admit what they meant. Back then, I used to believe in quiet love, the kind where things didn't have to be said out loud all the time. Where trust was the language and forgiveness was automatic. But sitting across from her that morning, watching her stir cream into her coffee with that same practiced calm she used when lying, I realized something. Silence can rot things too. It's not just noise that breaks a marriage. It's everything you stop saying. After breakfast, she got in her car and left for work. I watched her pull out of the driveway, still wearing the necklace I gave her on our anniversary. She hadn't taken it off, but it didn't mean anything anymore. It was just another part of the costume. I went back upstairs and opened the drawer where I'd first hidden the napkin. For a second, I thought about tearing it up, deleting the whole moment from my memory. But instead, I folded it carefully and placed it in the envelope with the receipt. A kind of time capsule, I guess. Proof that the moment I thought we might still have something left, that moment had already passed. When she came home that night, we didn't talk about anything important. She told me about some client meeting, a new guy they hired, something about her manager being too clingy. I nodded along. I smiled in the right places. But inside, I wasn't there anymore. I watched her move around the kitchen like a stranger. Same woman, same house, but different story now. One I wasn't part of anymore, not really. Maybe I never had been. When we went to bed that night, I turned off the light and faced away from her. She slid under the covers and whispered, "Good night." I said nothing. The ring was gone from my finger, but I still felt its weight. And that napkin? It stayed. On her nightstand. She didn't throw it away. We never mentioned it again. But it sat there like a crack in the wall you stopped trying to fix. You just learned to live around it. After that morning with the napkin and the ring, something inside me clicked, and not in a good way. It was like my brain switched modes from husband to investigator, and suddenly I couldn't stop noticing things. Not new things, exactly. Things that had been there for a while, quietly building a case while I was too blind or too trusting to see it. Holly had started working late more often. At first, I chalked it up to her being ambitious. She was always climbing, always chasing some next big opportunity at the firm. I used to be proud of that. I'd brag about her at parties. Now, I found myself checking the clock every time she texted that she'd be late again. The messages were short, vague, running behind, don't wait up, or just meeting. No names, no details, just a breadcrumb trail that led nowhere. Her phone, once left on the kitchen counter while she made dinner or showered, had become an extension of her body. Always in her hand, screen tilted away, locked tighter than a bank vault. New password. New notifications hidden. I didn't even realize when that changed. It just did. Then there was the perfume. The first time she came home smelling different, I didn't say anything. It was faint, subtle, something unfamiliar that clung to her scarf. When I asked about it, she laughed and said it must have been from hugging someone goodbye at a conference. I let it go. The second time, same excuse. Oh, I borrowed a coat from someone. Probably that. A weird thing to repeat. The third time, I didn't ask. I just opened a window and let it air out. She also started picking fights more. Little things. The dishwasher not being loaded her way. The way I left the toothpaste cap off. My tone when I asked a simple question. Her favorite one was accusing me of being too quiet, too distant, like I wasn't trying. That one was Rich? I started to realize these arguments weren't about dishes or toothpaste. They were shields. Smoke. Distractions designed to make me the problem so she didn't have to look in the mirror. But I did look. At everything. Every strange late-night email she claimed she forgot to send during the day. Every last-minute dinner invite with colleagues I'd never heard of. Every weekend trip that somehow became a Monday morning flight. It was all there. Like puzzle pieces dropped casually around the house, waiting for me to stop pretending they didn't fit together. One night, I remember lying in bed next to her and just watching her scroll on her phone, face illuminated by the blue glow. She tilted the screen away from me like it was instinct. When she realized I was watching, she put the phone down and smiled. A smile I didn't recognize. Polite. Performed. Something she probably practiced in elevators and hotel lobbies. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. Just tired. It wasn't a lie. I was tired. Tired of trying to keep the gears of something going that clearly didn't want to run anymore. Tired of feeling like a guest in my own marriage. Tired of acting like I didn't know. I started keeping notes. Not in some obsessive cinematic way, just facts. Times, dates, places. A spreadsheet, actually. Hidden behind a work file named Quarterly Budget Analysis. Every late night logged. Every out-of-town trip not previously mentioned. Every lie marked with a date stamp. There were patterns. A rhythm. Thursday nights, she was always working late. Same with every second Tuesday. She started dressing differently, too. Nicer clothes. Heels more often. Lipstick on a weekday. At first, I thought she was just trying something new. Then I realized she never wore any of it when she was with me. There was a Saturday afternoon when she said she was running to Target. 3 hours later, she came back without any bags. They didn't have what I needed, she said. No apology. Just that. Her makeup looked fresher than when she left. I started replaying older memories 2 months back. Once she came home flushed, breathless, said her phone died and she couldn't call to say she'd be late. I remember the panic I'd felt back then, worrying something had happened. Now, that memory felt hollow. Fake. Even the way she touched me had changed. Or didn't. Our bed, once a place where we laughed, tangled, dreamed together, had become a neutral zone. Cold. Polite. We slept back to back more often than not. She claimed she was tired. I stopped asking. It was like living with a version of Holly. Not the woman I married, but a shell wearing her face. Going through motions. Playing the role. I knew I wasn't perfect. I had my own faults. Got too wrapped up in work sometimes. Forgot anniversaries. Probably didn't listen enough when she vented about her job. But none of those things justified the shift I was seeing. This wasn't distance. This was erasure. I started watching her more closely, listening to the tone in her voice when she answered calls. the slight smile she wore after texting someone. I noticed how her laughter changed depending on who she was talking to. With me, it was clipped, shallow. With whoever was on the other end of those messages, it was real. Full. One afternoon, while she was at lunch with clients, I walked into the bedroom and opened her closet. I don't know why. Maybe I just wanted to feel something real. I saw a small box on the top shelf I hadn't seen before. Inside was a hotel keycard. No logo, just a plain plastic card. I held it for a minute before setting it back. I didn't take a photo. I didn't need to. I already knew. Later that week, she kissed me on the forehead before heading out to a strategy session and said, "I know I've been hard to live with lately. Thanks for being patient." It was the first time she'd acknowledged the tension. And it wasn't an apology. It was a test to see if I'd call her out. I didn't. I just nodded and said, "Drive safe." And when the door shut behind her, I didn't feel sad. I felt empty, hollowed out, like something inside me had already packed up and left. The napkins stayed on her nightstand. My ring, too. She didn't move them, didn't ask why I'd left them there. They became part of the furniture, like the silence in our house, like the growing void between who we were and who we were pretending to be. The patterns weren't just in her behavior. They were in mine, too. I had stopped fighting, stopped asking. I wasn't waiting for answers anymore. I was watching a story unfold, one page at a time, knowing exactly where it was going. And somehow, I still wasn't ready to close the book. It happened on a Friday, one of those rare days where the office closed early for some internal software maintenance. No real reason, just an excuse to cut everyone loose before the weekend. I didn't text Holly to let her know I was coming home. Didn't want to give her the heads up. Not that I had a plan or anything. I just had a feeling, one I couldn't shake. The driveway was the first red flag. Parked at the end was a sleek black sedan I didn't recognize. Out of place. New. Not a neighbor's. The windows were tinted, and the engine was off, but I could still smell the faint heat from the hood. I hadn't been there long. I parked at the curb, cut the engine, and just sat there for a second. My heart wasn't pounding the way I expected. It was more like quiet dread, like the kind of silence you feel before a storm breaks. I stepped out of the car and walked slowly up the path. I didn't rush. I didn't want to. When I opened the front door, the house was warm. Too warm. The thermostat was up higher than we usually kept it, like someone didn't want to be under blankets. And then I heard it. A soft thud upstairs. Movement. A door. Maybe a voice. I stood there in the entryway for a full 10 seconds, just listening. Then I walked up the stairs. I didn't call out her name. Didn't try to catch anyone in the act like some movie scene. I wasn't interested in dramatics. I just wanted the truth even if I already knew it. The bedroom door was open. She was standing there, in the middle of the room, wearing lingerie I didn't recognize. Black, sheer, expensive looking. Her hair was still damp, curling slightly at the ends like she'd just stepped out of the shower. She froze when she saw me, eyes wide. Not with fear, with recognition. The look of someone whose house of cards had just been hit by wind. Her phone was on the nightstand, still lit up. And on the screen, a message from a contact saved under a fake name, J. Parker. Just 2 lines visible. Leaving now. That was amazing. She scrambled to grab a robe, fumbled with the drawer, her mouth opening and closing without saying anything. I didn't speak either, just stood in the doorway taking it all in. The smell of aftershave that wasn't mine. The second wine glass on the dresser. The slight indentation on the opposite side of the bed. "Kevin," she started, breathless. "Don't," I said. That's all. Just that one word. She didn't try again. I turned around and walked downstairs. Didn't slam a door. Didn't yell. Just left. I didn't even know where I was driving until I was already 10 miles out, staring at the exit sign for a rest stop. I pulled in, parked, and sat in the lot with the engine idling. That's when the adrenaline kicked in. My hands started shaking. My chest felt like it was being crushed from the inside out. Not from rage, but from confirmation. I had known. Deep down, I had known. Now it was fact. That evening, After I'd calmed down enough to think straight, I started piecing things together. If J. Parker was a contact on her phone, maybe there were more clues. I logged into the shared cell account we hadn't touched in years, back when we bundled our bills. Her call history wasn't hard to find. There he was. Same number dozens of times. Short calls, long calls, late-night calls. Most of them made when she said she was out getting groceries or working late. Then it hit me. I'd seen that car before. Not just today. Weeks ago, I passed it pulling out of a gas station near our place. I even remember glancing at the plate. Part of it stuck with me. Something about the letters CPR. It was just familiar enough to itch at the back of my brain. I wrote it down this time and ran a check. Took some digging, but eventually I found the owner. Registered to one of her coworkers. Not just any coworker. Someone she'd mentioned only in passing. A junior associate. Younger. Charismatic. Always great with clients. The kind of guy who makes meetings fun. I stared at his LinkedIn profile for a full 5 minutes, wondering what the hell she saw in him. Then I stopped myself. It wasn't about him. It was about her. About the choices she made, the life she had built behind my back. Over the next few days, I didn't say anything. Holly tried to act like things were normal. She cooked dinner once. Played that playlist we used to listen to during long drives. Wore the cardigan I'd bought her last Christmas. It was all rehearsed. Performative. But I wasn't ready to confront her. Not fully. Not yet. Instead, I got strategic. She left her laptop on the kitchen table one evening while she went upstairs to take a call. Her usual password didn't work, but I guessed the new one on the third try. It was the name of our old dog, plus a number. Not exactly Fort Knox. The desktop was clean. Too clean. But her photo library? Not so much. There they were, pictures from the beach. Not from a business trip, not from a girls' weekend. Just her and him, laughing, wrapped in towels, sitting under an umbrella with drinks in hand. One photo had him kissing her shoulder. Her eyes were closed. The metadata said it was taken 2 months ago, right around the time she claimed she had been at a marketing conference in South Carolina. I kept scrolling. There were selfies in hotel rooms. One of her in his dress shirt, smiling like she hadn't smiled at me in months. Another of them at dinner, toasting glasses of wine in a booth. He was holding her hand. I backed out of the photos, heart pounding in a way that didn't feel like anger. Felt like grief. Like mourning someone who was still alive, still breathing, still living under the same roof. But not the same person I married. When she came back down, I had already logged out and closed the laptop. She looked at me like she was trying to read a weather forecast in my eyes. Was it safe? Was the storm coming? I gave her nothing. Just a smile and a nod and a, "You get everything done?" She nodded back. "Yeah. Long call. Sorry." I knew she was lying. And she knew I knew. But we played the scene anyway. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I could hear her breathing beside me, slow and steady, like someone who didn't believe the world had changed. Maybe she thought she still had time. Maybe she thought I wouldn't do anything, that I'd let it slide. I turned onto my side, staring at the outline of the ring still sitting on her nightstand, right where I'd left it. I thought about taking it back, reclaiming it, putting it back on just for the illusion of normalcy. But I didn't. I left it there like a gravestone for what used to be, because this wasn't a slip-up. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't something she fell into accidentally, like a pothole in the dark. This was a second life, fully constructed, mapped out, hidden in plain sight. And now I had proof. I used to think the worst part of betrayal was the moment you realized it happened. That moment when the curtain gets yanked back and you see everything for what it is. But I was wrong. The worst part is what comes after. The digging, the second-guessing, the unraveling of your own memory, piece by piece, until you're not sure if anything was ever real. It started with a notification on her tablet. She had left it unlocked on the couch, face up, charging. Probably didn't think twice about it. She never used it for anything important, or so she claimed. But when I passed by, I saw a message flash across the screen. Just a glimpse. a name I didn't recognize, and one sentence before it vanished. Thanks for not telling him about Chicago. Chicago? She'd never mentioned a trip to Chicago. I stood there frozen, like the air had thickened around me. I waited to see if another message would come through. Didn't. I picked up the tablet, opened the app. Nothing. The conversation had been deleted within seconds. Like muscle memory. Like she'd done it before. That night, I barely slept. I couldn't stop thinking about it. What had she hidden from me now? Another trip? Another man? A whole other version of her life? The next morning, while she was in the shower, I sat in the car with my phone and opened an old app one hadn't used in years. Something we downloaded ages ago to help locate each other during business trips. I'd forgotten I still had access. She hadn't. Took a second to load. Then her location history popped up. A long trail of data points, some expected work, home, her parents' house. But then I saw them. 2 unexplained trips, each marked by full weekends in cities she never told me she'd visited. One of them was Chicago. The other, Nashville. She'd been gone those weekends. Said she was with co-workers at some out-of-town events. The dates lined up perfectly. I remember even offering to drive her to the airport. She said she'd rather Uber, that it would be easier. She'd been planning this for a long time, or at the very least making it easy to lie. I scrolled back further. More data points, more gaps. There was even a night 2 months ago where she claimed she was stuck late at a company dinner. But her phone location showed her parked outside a Marriott for 3 hours. At this point, I wasn't even surprised. I just felt hollow. I went back through emails, browser histories, her calendar. I became a forensic scientist in my own marriage. My mind, once filled with affection and trust, now worked like a detective's notebook. I found deleted messages in her archived Gmail, travel confirmations sent to an email alias I didn't even know she had. Her name was on reservations for hotels in 3 different cities, none of which lined up with any work events she told me about. It wasn't just one affair. It was a pattern. There were multiple trips, multiple names, different burner email addresses tied to loyalty programs, multiple stories carefully curated depending on where she was going, who she said she was meeting, and how late she claimed she'd be. It wasn't sloppy. It wasn't random. It was structured. She hadn't slipped. She hadn't fallen into this life accidentally. She had built it. And the part that hit the hardest wasn't the cheating itself. It was realizing how much time she had spent making sure I wouldn't notice. The mental energy it took to lie that consistently, that thoroughly. It wasn't about being unhappy. It was about control. About power. I wasn't her partner anymore. I was her alibi. Once I saw that, everything else fell into place. The way she used to get defensive when I asked small questions. The sudden surge in her need for space. Her accusations that I wasn't supportive enough, justifications, I now realized, for the guilt she was burying. She wasn't just covering her tracks. She was rewriting the narrative so that I would be the one who questioned myself. And it had worked. For a while. I'd apologized to her more in the last year than I had in our entire marriage. Apologized for not getting it. For asking too much. For wanting to be close when she said she needed distance. I thought I was fighting for us. Turns out, I was just dancing in a play where she was the director and I didn't know the script. The more I uncovered, the more I started noticing how well she masked it. She wasn't cold. She wasn't cruel. In fact, she was affectionate in just the right ways. Just enough to keep things believable. Just enough to keep me from pulling the thread. Until I did. And once I pulled that thread, everything came down. I remember sitting on the couch one evening, watching her scroll through her phone with that soft little smile on her face. The one she used when she thought no one was looking. That smile used to comfort me. Now it made my skin crawl. Because I didn't know who she was smiling for. I used to believe that trust could be rebuilt, that anything could be salvaged with enough effort. But that belief belonged to a different man, a man who thought his marriage was real. This was a performance. And I was the audience. That week, I started copying everything. Emails, photos, travel documents. I backed up data to a hard drive, made printed copies, Took **ts of messages before she could delete them. I cataloged it all, not out of vengeance, but out of necessity. Because I knew what was coming. One night, she came home with takeout from our favorite Thai place. She poured wine, asked me about work, played our playlist while she set the table. It was like she could feel me drifting and decided to reel me back in. She even wore the sweater I said made her look like autumn in motion. At one point, she sat across from me, glass in hand, and said, "I know things have been rocky, but I feel like we're turning a corner." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her, not her face, her. The version of her I was finally beginning to see. The one with layers and secrets and strategies. Then I said, "You really think so?" She smiled. "Yeah, I do." I nodded. She didn't notice how my voice didn't match my eyes. She didn't notice the shift in my posture. She thought the play was still going. But I had already stopped watching. And soon I'd be gone. If you've ever watched a seasoned liar realize they're losing control, you know the shift when it happens. There's a specific moment. Not when they admit the truth, but when they sense the grip slipping and scramble to tighten it. That's when they stop lying to protect themselves and start lying to keep you in place. That's what happened with Holly. She didn't find my folder of evidence. She didn't know I'd seen the photos, traced her locations, or read through every hidden email she thought was erased. But she felt something. A change in the way I moved, in the things I stopped saying. I didn't argue anymore. I didn't joke. I didn't ask where she'd been or who she'd been texting. I stopped playing along. And Holly noticed. So she pivoted. One morning, out of nowhere, she made breakfast. Not a bowl of cereal or a piece of toast, actual breakfast. Eggs, bacon, cinnamon rolls. She even made fresh squeezed orange juice. Said she woke up feeling nostalgic. She wore the robe she used to wear in our early years. Put on a playlist we hadn't listened to since the road trip to Asheville. When I walked into the kitchen, she was dancing a little while flipping pancakes, laughing at nothing, like we were back in year one. She turned to me, smiled. "You remember this song?" I nodded but didn't smile back. She poured me coffee and slid into the seat across from me like it was all natural, like it hadn't been weeks of tension, of cold shoulders and sleepless nights. Over breakfast, she started talking about maybe taking time off work. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what really matters. I've been so stressed, you know? I miss us." I nodded again. She reached across the table, placed her hand over mine. "Do you ever think about when we met? That little cafe? How I spilled my drink on you? That memory used to be warm. Now it just felt like a line in a script she was rehearsing again." The next few days were a theater production. She cooked more. Wore things I hadn't seen in years. Sundresses, soft t-shirts I once complimented her on. She dug up old photos and left them out, framed on the shelf like a museum exhibit. "Look what we used to be." She asked if I wanted to go hiking again. Like we used to. She played the part perfectly, nostalgic, gentle, present. But the more perfect it seemed, the more I saw it for what it was. Strategy. Not restoration. Not love. Manipulation, dressed in familiarity. And I wasn't angry. That's what surprised me most. I wasn't even sad. I was studying her now, the way you study a magician after you've seen the secret behind the trick. One night, she cried. Full-on tears, shoulders shaking. She clutched my arm and said, "I feel like I'm losing you. I don't know what to do." She wept like a woman trying to save her marriage. I almost believed it, until the next morning when I checked the hidden folder on her phone. Something I'd found by accident a week before. Inside was a **T of a hotel reservation. One she'd made during that same night she'd cried into my shoulder. The reservation was for the next weekend. Under a fake name. I didn't confront her. What was the point? Instead, I started documenting everything. Not just the digital evidence. The behavior, her timing, her attempts to draw me in, followed by moments where she'd slip up. Checking her phone too often, texting while in the bathroom too long, flipping it face down anytime I entered the room. This wasn't reconciliation. This was her trying to keep the story alive. She didn't want me back. She wanted control. And I'd become the last piece she hadn't figured out how to manipulate again. There was a night where she lit candles at dinner. Candles. We hadn't done that in years. She wore lipstick I hadn't seen since our 3rd anniversary. Halfway through the meal, she said, "I've been thinking about couples counseling." I raised an eyebrow. "We could try, you know? Really try. I don't want to lose you." And again I nodded. No argument. No accusations. Just silence. Like giving her enough rope. She leaned forward, voice low. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Have you been seeing someone?" That was the moment I knew. She was spinning now, trying to shift the narrative again. Create a new enemy. If I said yes, she could redirect the betrayal. If I said no, she'd pretend we were starting fresh. Either way, she was trying to regain control of the script. I said nothing. She laughed nervously. "Sorry. I feel like there's this wall between us. I don't know where it came from." "That wall, Holly? You built it." But I didn't say it. I just poured more wine and watched her try to find her footing. A few days later, she left her phone on the coffee table when she went to shower. I glanced at it. Couldn't help myself. New message from someone saved as L. "Same room as last time. Don't be late, winky face." That was 2 days after she cried about missing me. I started packing that night, not clothes, not to leave yet. Packing evidence. Receipts. Screensh**, TS. Notes. Timelines. My wedding ring stayed in the drawer, still lying on that napkin like it belonged to another life. She kept trying. She bought groceries I liked. Woke up early to make coffee. Left notes on the fridge with hearts drawn beside my name. And yet, every night, I'd check her phone logs. Every night, she'd send or receive something that told the real story. She wasn't trying to fix us. She was trying to reset the illusion. She didn't love me. She loved the version of herself that looked like she was trying. The one who could say, "I fought for us," even as she made hotel reservations on the side. She needed me to play along. But I had stopped being her scene partner. And once she realized that, the tears turned cold. She stopped crying. She started probing. "Where do you go when you leave at night? Why don't you talk to me anymore? Are you hiding something?" Projection is a funny thing. When a person builds their life on lies, they assume everyone else is playing the same game. But I wasn't hiding anything. I was preparing. Quietly. Thoroughly. And soon it would all be over. Because this wasn't reconciliation. It was theater. And I was about to bring down the curtain. I waited until the morning she left for another team retreat. Same suitcase. Same hurried kiss on the cheek. Same rehearsed smile. The moment her car disappeared down the road, I went to the closet, pulled out the box I'd been building for weeks, and placed everything inside. The napkin. My wedding ring. Printouts of her messages, hotel bookings, photos. Even a map I made from her location data. Everything was labeled. Neat. Unmistakable. On top, I placed the divorce papers. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to. The box said everything. Then I left. No dramatic exit. No confrontation. Just silence. I'd already found a short-term rental 2 towns over, a place with bare walls and a bed that didn't remember us. I left my phone off for days. Let the calls and messages pile up. When I finally turned it back on, the first thing that popped up was a notification, 27 missed calls. For voicemails. Dozens of texts. It started with confusion. Then panic. Then anger. She hadn't expected this. She'd expected a fight. A tearful argument. Some chance to explain, manipulate, control the damage. Instead, she got a box. And silence. Later, I saw the security camera footage from the doorbell, her walking up with her bag still slung over her shoulder, spotting the box on the porch and just freezing. She didn't open it right away. She stood there for nearly a minute. Then she picked it up and carried it inside like it weighed more than it did. She tried texting again after that. A long message blaming me for not talking, for giving up. Claiming we could work through anything. Even after all of it, she still believed this was salvageable. I didn't respond. Eventually, the messages stopped. And for the first time in a long time, I felt nothing. A month later, I sold the house. I didn't want anything from it, not the furniture, not the dishes, not the bed we used to share. I donated most of it. Kept only what fit in the back of a rented pickup and headed north. I settled in a quiet coastal town where no one knew my name. Rented a small trailer by the bay. Got a job fixing boats. Simple work. Honest. The kind that leaves your hands sore and your mind clear. I didn't tell anyone where I went. Not my friends. Not my parents. I just started over. There was no need to expose her. No post online. No revenge fantasy played out. She could tell whatever story she wanted to whoever still listened. I wasn't in it anymore. The napkin with the ring? She kept it. I know because someone sent me a photo months later, her desk at work, newly redecorated with that napkin under a paperweight. Like it meant something. Maybe it did. But not to me. It wasn't a symbol of love lost. It was proof that I'd seen her for who she really was and left. I didn't leave because she cheated. I left because I finally understood she was never the person I thought I married. And in that truth I found peace. Quiet, unremarkable, beautiful peace.